Here's how to make your PS5 the best it can possibly be. So whether you've had your PS5 for 2 years now, or you just managed to get your hands on one, there are quite a few accessories available on the market that can make your PS5 even better. The thing's been out for around 2 years now, so that's more than enough time to build up a huge list of options you have when you're buying anything, ranging from a controller all the way down to an SSD and the side plates you put on your panel. So me, having had this channel for around 2 years, I've messed around with a ton of this stuff, and I've gone through my huge list of products and picked out everything I think is worth picking up for your brand new PS5 or your 2-year-old PS5. First up, let's talk about controllers. So because the DualSense is basically the most advanced controller on the market, you don't have a ton of third-party options like you have on the Xbox Series X. I mean, they're coming out with like $40 controllers left and right, and all we really have on the PS5 is very expensive alternatives. So if you want to go the official route, you can basically get a whole plethora of different DualSenses straight from Sony. They have purple ones, they have pink ones, they have blue ones, they have red ones, they have black ones, they have white ones. They're about to have a God of War Ragnarok edition of the DualSense, and if you wait a little bit longer, you can also get the DualSense Edge to fulfill your Pro controller needs. But if you're in the market for a Pro controller right now, you can also get the Scuff Reflex, which has a bunch of different options, but either way, you're going to be paying a minimum of $200 to get your hands on that bad boy. So my recommendation, if you're waiting for a Pro controller, is to just hold out a little bit longer and see how much the DualSense Edge costs, because you know, it's the official Sony controller, not made by a third party, which is pretty cool. But if you want to buy a controller right now, I would also take a look at the side plates you can get directly from Sony, because as you'll quickly notice, they match up perfectly with all the different color combinations you have for the DualSense. Now, if you're someone who really wants your PS5 to match your controller, you're not going to want to get the God of War Ragnarok controller, because as of now, Sony has only announced the two-tone controller, and they don't have a matching side plate to go along with it. And in my opinion, it's a huge missed opportunity for Sony to not have that, because it would be really cool to have a collection where you can get a God of War pair of side plates for your PS5 that goes along with this DualSense they've already announced. Obviously, the only reason I think they're waiting for that to do kind of special editions like that is because we are getting the PS5 Slim next year. It just leaked. It's going to be a new version that has a digital model and a disc model, but the disc model is going to be different because it's going to come along with a detachable disc drive that has a USB cord that sticks out the back and connects to the new USB-C port on the back of the console. So I'm sure they're waiting until that's out to finally do some special edition plates. So long story short, if you're into the idea of having a special edition controller that matches your side plates, I would skip the God of War edition and go with like Cosmic Red or Black, because that's what I have, Midnight Black, and it looks so good sitting next to my black PS5 when I'm charging that controller. And if you want to know the price breakdown for these, it's super easy. The two cheapest versions you're going to have are the White Edition and the Midnight Black Edition. Both of those are just $70, which is the same price as an official PlayStation game. That's the same price as they had the DualShock 4, so it makes sense. The different colored options, the red, the pink, the blue, the purple, those are going to cost you $5 more at $75. And as for the plates, it's a lot easier to figure out because they're all the same price. Whether you get the Midnight Black or the purple or the pink or the blue, you're going to be paying $55 for a set, which honestly seems a little expensive for two pieces of plastic. But if you're into aesthetic like I am and you wanted your PS5 to kind of resemble the PS2 you had back in the day, well, you're just gonna have to pay $55 for it. But unlike the DualSense, that is cheaper than a game. So that's pretty cool. With the cosmetics out of the way, let's talk about headsets, because unlike the PS4, you have a lot of official options here directly from Sony. So if you want to get the official PlayStation headset that's going to get you the most bang for your buck, you have the Pulse Wireless 3D headset, which has actually been around since the PS3 days. Like, it was introduced during the PS3 generation, and every generation since has had some revision of the Pulse 3D wireless headset. This thing is pretty bog standard in terms of what it does. It's basically a pair of headphones that comes along with a little USB dongle that you can plug into the front of your PS5, and it'll connect directly to that. But you also get some really cool features like being able to change the actual EQ on the headphones, which in my opinion makes them a lot better. There's a couple articles out there you can look up that show you some custom EQ that people have figured out that make them sound basically perfect. So if you do end up picking up this headset, I would make sure you look into that so you have the levels all set correctly. Another cool feature they have is, of course, 3D audio, which is like Sony's version of virtual surround sound. The game where this really stood out the most to me was Ghost of Tsushima, because of course the way you figure out where you're going when you set a waypoint is by swiping up on your DualSense or your DualShock 4's touchpad, and then the wind blows and you can kind of hear hear it come up behind you and pass over you and then go in front of you. And that's a really cool way to kind of use that 3D audio. Of course, Call of Duty is another great way to use 3D audio. I just got to try that out with the Modern Warfare 2 beta. Footsteps are a big controversy in this game. They apparently made them too loud for some people who were also complaining that they weren't loud enough back in 2019. Either way, having a headset with 3D audio means you'll be able to hear people running up behind you a lot easier, which is like the best thing ever. Another option you have is the Inzone line, which is made by Sony, not necessarily PlayStation, but it's made to look like it's built for PlayStation. There are 3 different headsets you can pick up from that line: the H3, the H7, and the H9. The H3 is the wired version of the headset, and it's the cheapest one. So even though this headset is wired, it takes advantage of the 360 spatial sound, and you can use it with your PC, which is pretty cool. It also has a flip down boom mic, and when you flip it up, it mutes the mic, and when you flip it down, it unmutes it, which is like the best feature of all 3 of these headsets, and kind of a good reason to pick one of these up over the Pulse Wireless 3D. This headset, the wired one, is $100, which is the same price as the Pulse Wireless, but it also gives you that flip up mic muting, and the mic overall sounds a lot better than the Pulse Wireless one because the Pulse Wireless one is built into the actual can, so it sounds like a little bit tinny. Now, the price difference between the H3 and the H7 is kind of insane. You're going from $100 to $230, and for that price jump, you're getting some pretty cool features. On the one hand, it's wireless. It comes along with a very similar dongle to the one you'll see with the Pulse Wireless headset, but the coolest thing is you can connect to that dongle and Bluetooth at the same time. And if you're wondering why you would want to do that, for me personally, playing Destiny 2 on my PC, I had that little dongle connected, and then I had the headset Bluetooth connected to my phone, and I turned on the music all the way in Destiny, and I used my own playlist of just straight metal from my phone. And you can even change the volume mixing between the Bluetooth connection and the in-game connection so that you can hear what's going on in the game, but also hear your music, which is great. The battery life on this thing is also kind of crazy at around 40 hours of continuous gameplay. So for me personally, that's like 2 to 3 weeks of continuous use on this headset, not needing to charge it, which is great. And yeah, you are paying around $130 more than the Pulse Wireless headset, but the sound quality on this thing is so much better. So that's kind of the sweet spot of the premium line of headsets. And now we get to talk about the H9, which is even more expensive. This thing is going to run you $300, and for that extra money, you're getting the same-ish sound quality as the H7. I think both of these headsets use the 1000X Mark IV cans, which are like some of the best Bluetooth headphones you can get on the market. Like, they're just so good. And it also throws in active noise cancellation, which Sony is really good. They rival Apple at this point, and also it has better material on the ear cups, which is nice for $300. This is the headset I've messed around with the most, but I gotta be real, I didn't pay $300 for it. I just borrowed it from my friend who got it, and I really liked it. I thought it was cool. The battery life is insanely good on these as well, but because of course you're using active noise cancellation, it's gonna be a little bit less than the H7 at around 32 hours, which is still really good in my opinion. So if you're asking me, between the Inzone headsets and the Pulse Wireless 3D, if you don't have a ton of money to spend, I would go with the Pulse Wireless 3D and not get the Inzone H3. I just like the fact that it's wireless and they're really comfortable on your head. And if you have a bunch of money to spend, I would say go with the H7 versus the H9, because even though active noise cancellation is nice and you can use them as some pretty good Bluetooth headphones, it just looks kind of weird if you're sitting on a plane and you've got a microphone flipped up on your headset. So yeah, I would just go with the H7 for less money so that you can use that as your dedicated wireless gaming headset and not really worry too much about active noise cancellation. Or if you want to get crazy with it, you could get the Pulse Wireless 3D headset for $100, and you could buy a pair of 1000X Mark IVs to go with them. You're going to pay the most that way, but you're going to get a pair of great headphones to wear outside or on planes or on buses and stuff like that, and then you're going to have a nice headset to use at home. Now let's talk about displays, because you have some options here. You of course could use a PC monitor, or you could use a TV. Now I personally have an older LG OLED at home. It's like the precursor to the CX line, and now they're already on the C2 line, and that seems to be what people really like to use with the PlayStation 5. But either way, OLED is the way to go if you're going to use a TV. There's a lot of games like The Last of Us Part 2, and of course Deathloop, and God of War, and God of War Ragnarok coming up that look really good on an OLED screen. And of course something like Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, that looks incredible on an OLED screen. If you're going to spend the money on a new TV, I would definitely make sure it has OLED. The 55-inch version of the TV is around $1,500, which is pretty standard across the board, I would say. And if you want to get a 65-inch version, that is going to run you $1,900, which is pretty pricey, but the difference between OLED and pretty much every other technology out there is immediately noticeable. Like my fiance, for example, she doesn't care about screen resolution or OLED or pixels or anything like that, but I showed her my OLED TV when I got it and she was like, yes, this looks so much better than the TCL TV sitting in our living room. I personally think OLED is worth the price increase there. The coolest thing about the PS5 though is that it recently got an update that allowed it to have 1440p output, which basically makes PC monitors super viable as your display for this thing. The monitor I'm happy to recommend is the one I've been using, the Inzone M9. This is a 4K monitor with 144 Hz refresh rate, which yes, is higher than the PS5 is technically capable of outputting, but it's still cool to have with my PC and the PS5 because the PS5 can do 120 Hz. And this thing also has full array local dimming, which is a feature I don't really understand, but I think it looks really nice. And also it has G-Sync built in, which is just like another branded word for variable refresh rate, which means like if you're running a game at 60 frames per second, if it drops below 60 FPS, you're not going to see stuttering. Like the monitor can move its refresh rate to be in line with what the game is actually playing at. That's the simplest way to put it. And the PS5 can take advantage of that, which is pretty cool. Now, if you're not too worried about resolution, you also have the Inzone M3, which is 1080p. They're both 27 inches, and because it's 1080p, you're allowed to get a higher refresh rate out of it, and this one goes all the way up to 240 Hz. Now again, you're not going to be taking advantage of that with your PS5, but if you do have a gaming PC, you'll definitely be able to take advantage of that, and if it's like a modern gaming PC, you'll definitely be able to hit 240 Hz if you're running at 1080p. Now, both of these monitors are pretty pricey, but they do look really nice. The M3 is going to be around $530, and then the M9 goes all the way up to $900, and yeah, that's expensive, but if you want a good monitor that matches your PS5's aesthetic and also is going to function really well as a PC monitor and last you a really long time, I feel totally safe recommending both of these options. The next and arguably most important thing you're going to need to make your PS5 better is an SSD. And especially if you play stuff like 2K, Destiny, or Warzone, a lot of those games are over 100 gigabytes, so you're gonna fill that thing up really fast. I've been fortunate enough over the past 2 years to look at pretty much every SSD you can use with your PS5, and here are the best ones I think you should look for. So if you want a branded version, you should go with the WD Black SN850. This one has PlayStation branding, and you're gonna pay $260 for that PlayStation branding. You can also get the exact same version of this SSD for $250 without that PlayStation branding, and honestly, I would go with that if you are going with the WD Black because it's literally no different than the branded version, so like why pay $10 more? But if you're looking in the range of 1 terabyte options, you should definitely go with the unbranded one because it's only $120 versus paying $150 for the branded one. So for that blue and white box, you're paying an extra $30, and in my opinion, that $30 isn't worth it. I mean, it has an LED on it, but like you're not gonna see that inside your PS5, so just go with the cheaper version. The one that I have inside my PS5 that I highly recommend is the Samsung 980 Pro. For the 2 terabyte version of this SSD, you're gonna pay around $250. That's just basically the standard price across the board. And then the 1 terabyte is a little more costly at $145. Now, me personally, I love the 2 terabyte. I think it's totally worth it. They did just announce the 990, but you're just gonna be paying more for a little bit faster speed. And in my opinion, the 980 Pro is more than good enough. So that's the one that gets my stamp of approval. But if you're someone who wants raw speed, the fastest drive I've tested is the FireCuda 530. This one is once again $250 for the 2 terabyte version and $140 for the 1 terabyte version. And yeah, like I mentioned, this is the fastest one I've personally tested. It saved like over a minute when I was transferring Ghostwire Tokyo from the disc to the PS5, and it also transferred games from the internal storage to the external storage about 30 seconds faster. If you're really strapped for time, I would say go for this one, but just because I've used it the most, I'm still gonna give my ultimate recommendation to the 980 Pro. And then the last thing you're going to need is a PS Plus membership, and now you have 3 options. So you have PS Plus Essential, PS Plus Extra, and PS Plus Premium. PS Plus Essential is like PS Plus that you've already known forever. It gives you a few games every month, allows you to play online, and that's about it. And when they introduced these 2 other models, they did not increase the price, so it's around $60 a year, which is cheaper cheaper than a game. The middle tier option is PS Plus Extra for $100 a year or $15 a month. And this is like the biggest competitor to Game Pass, I guess. The big difference is it doesn't come with cloud streaming, which for me personally, like who cares? I'm never going to use that. But the biggest benefit that you really want to take advantage of is PS4 and PS5 games and a huge library that you can just download whenever you want. And they have some really good stuff on there, like Returnal, Demon's Souls, Miles Morales, Spider-Man Remastered, a ton of their best PS4 games, like pretty much anything you can think of outside of like Horizon Forbidden West, Gran Turismo 7. The Last of Us Part 1 and God of War Ragnarok is going to be on there, and they literally just added Deathloop, which is a PS5 game that I absolutely, fully, wholeheartedly recommend. It's one of my favorite games of the past few years. So yeah, you get this huge library of games and they add to it every month on top of those other free games you get with the PS Plus Essential membership. And then finally you have PS Plus Premium, which in my opinion is the one you should stay away from. It costs $120 a year, and on top of everything you get with PS Plus Essential and Extra, you also get PlayStation Now streaming, and on top of that, you get some classic games that you can download every month. But Sony has been lacking super hard on adding classic games to their service, and they didn't even launch with that many. And on top of that, to add insult to injury, you can buy a lot of these games a la carte, and if you've bought them before in the past on your PSP, your PS3, or your PS Vita, you can pretty much download most of them once again for free. So if you ask me, in my opinion, the PS Plus you should buy is PlayStation Plus Extra. It's $100 a year and it's totally worth it for that huge game library. I don't think it's worth paying the extra to get PS Plus Premium, and I feel like you're lacking a little bit if you get PS Plus Essential. Like, you're paying $40 more to get a huge library of games and they don't suck. It's like some of the best games PlayStation's ever made, and you can just download them to your PS5, and now that you'll have a bigger SSD, you won't have to worry about running out of space.